Being cheated on is always awful, but there is a specific kind of pain that comes from being stuck with someone who cheated, especially when leaving isn't simple. If you're in that situation, it's not simply, I'm hurt and I need to figure out what to do. It usually feels more like, I'm hurt, I'm trapped, there's kids, there's bills, there's a house to take care of, there's logistics, there's money tied up in different things, and I don't have the freedom to just blow my life up overnight. It's not the type of betrayal that you can just easily leave. It's betrayal with no clear off ramp. And it's kind of like finding out that your house is full of smoke, there's a fire, but then there's something jammed underneath each of the doors. In other words, you don't get to respond as simply and neatly as people on the internet often make it sound like you should be able to. So this can lead to you feeling confused, numb, and angry all in the same day, wanting closeness from the very person who makes that closeness feel dangerous. It can look like looking at this partner and seeing two people at once. The person that you built a life with and the person who shattered your trust, the person that you're trying to escape from, and the person that has to be there for you to work this out with. So your nervous system feels like it's always kind of half braced for impact. Like, is there going to be another shoe that drops? Is there going to be another revelation of information? Oftentimes when you're torn between, I have to find a way to figure this out and this isn't really what's best for me, you often alternate between feeling like, am I being too harsh or am I being too soft? Am I being too naive or am I being too reactive? Am I being too emotional, too forgiving, not forgiving enough? And it just feels like every option has a giant list of cons. Staying hurts, leaving is impossible, waiting hurts, trying to push things forward faster doesn't seem to work. Needing help from them hurts, trying to do everything on your own is difficult, and it can feel like being handcuffed to someone who is making your life a living hell. And this is all 10 times harder when they're not taking the right steps. Because now you're not just in a spot where you have to heal from what happened, but you're being re-traumatized because it's still happening. Maybe not the same extent, maybe not a full-on affair, but the same actions and behaviors of dishonesty and not prioritizing you, not putting you first, not showing up how they need to be for the family. Those things often continue afterward. So a partner who cheated and then is not stepping up to make things right is keeping that wound open in a lot of ways. Oftentimes, this type of partner wants the comfort of you staying without doing the work to make you feel emotionally safe. They often want forgiveness with no accountability. They want access to you without having any sense of responsibility toward you. And they desperately want the marriage, the home, the image, the kids, the normalcy, things to just go back to how they were. But they're resisting doing the work that's required for it to return to that. And it's kind of like crashing somebody else's car that you borrowed, that they were kind enough to trust you with, and then complaining when they're asking, like, hey, did you file that insurance claim? Is this going to get fixed? And so before we get to what can you actually do in this situation, I want you to have some filters or some guidelines to think through to know whether or not your partner is actually trying to step up and make things work after infidelity or not. So here are some ways to know that they're not stepping up. They want you to move on faster than your nervous system actually can. They act inconvenienced by your pain. They apologize, but usually in a way where it sounds like they're trying to guess the words that you want instead of something that comes from their own heart. They minimize what happened. They call it a mistake instead of recognizing it as a pattern of choices. They focus more on defending themselves and avoiding feelings of shame or guilt than they do understanding your experience. They often get angry that you're still hurt. They expect trust to just come back magically because time has passed. It's been 3 months, it's been 6 months. But if nothing's changed during that time, why should there be a different level of trust now? They're still secretive, vague, or defensive with their phone, their location, passwords, schedule. They answer questions in fragments and give you partial answers instead of just giving you the whole story. They make you feel like asking for clarity is somehow abusive or controlling. They seem more committed to protecting their image than protecting your healing. They seem unwilling to sacrifice pretty much anything on their end. They don't proactively bring anything up. They don't proactively try to create safety. They don't proactively ask you how you're feeling about all of it. They show irritation when consequences linger. They are fundamentally more sorry that they got caught, not really remorseful over who they had become along the way. They want surface level peace instead of getting into the depths of what is actually true. And ultimately, they just want the easy way out. By contrast, what it looks like for someone to step up is full ownership, no minimizing, no blaming you for what they chose, no acting confused about why you're devastated, radical honesty, real patience, consistency over time, willingness to answer painful questions, and willingness to introspect to get you the answers to painful questions. You can tell that they have a real intention for you to feel safe, not just this focus on them feeling forgiven. Their attitude overall is more like, I broke this and I'll do the work, not why are you making this so hard? And most fundamentally, there is just a note of humility in how they're approaching things. And so I want to speak specifically to someone who is in a situation where their partner who cheated is not stepping up. That's one of the hardest situations that you can be in, especially when you're not free to leave right away. And I want you to understand that even if you aren't free to leave, you still have choice. And the biggest thing that you still have choice over is whether or not you will abandon yourself in this process and lose a sense of who you are. Maybe that's already happened, but it's your choice whether you will reclaim that or not, regardless of the exact situation that you have to be in right now. Staying in the house, for example, doesn't mean you have to disappear within it. Coexisting with them does not mean that you have to continue centering them. Remaining married on paper does not mean that you have to organize your whole emotional life around their comfort. We often think about freedom in terms of, especially in this context, in terms of like, you've moved on, you're out of that relationship, you're free. But what if freedom began internally? What if that freedom looked like saying, even if I'm still here physically, I am no longer going to make my healing dependent on their level of commitment. And I want to offer a quick caveat, is that if you're in a situation where they're not willing to step up and they're abusive, physically or emotionally, you need to get help for that. There are a lot of resources online, and that's a whole different approach than what this video is about. I'm assuming that there is physical safety, but that they're not willing to step up to help you feel emotionally safe. So assuming that there is physical safety, but you are still not in a position where they're stepping up, this is where the shift, that emotional freedom first perspective, really takes you from how do I get them to finally understand to how do I stop losing myself while living through this. You stop asking how do I get them to become who I need, and you start asking how do I become a safe home for myself and for my children. You stop asking how can I monitor them enough to feel safe, to how do I build a life that is not emotionally centered on them and make sure that they do the right thing. And I want to be clear, this is not pretending that everything is okay. It doesn't mean just practicing positive affirmations while your whole world is on fire. It means being committed to making sure that you do not lose yourself. And it means telling yourself the truth, your version of the truth, not filtering everything through what they would say in a hypothetical argument, but just stepping back and saying, okay, if I was gone, if we were way beyond this, if I was years into the future, how would I tell this story? What is actually happening? And it means being honest about what your partner is putting you through, not sugarcoating it, not dressing it up with their past trauma history as an excuse for how they're not helping you now. It means that you stop gaslighting yourself on their behalf. Self-love is what you need. But in this context, it is not this soft spa day type of self-love. It's protective. There's almost a parental feeling, like a mother or a father protecting their child. Like it's that type of energy. It's fierce. It's the part of you that says, my children need, or I need, at least one adult in this home who is emotionally anchored in reality. And for many of you listening who do have kids, you will probably have complex feelings around them. You might think that the best thing to do is just bury your own needs for their sake. You can't break up the home because the kids need a stable home. But there are a lot of different reasons to challenge that perspective. It might be the case that putting yourself first is putting your kids first. Because children don't just learn from what you tell them. They don't just learn from the statistical box that they're checked in, whether they have parents who divorced or not. They learn from the emotional atmosphere that they grow up inside. They learn from what love feels like. They learn from seeing what their parents do in terms of self-respect. They learn what conflict is supposed to look like. They learn whether or not pain is something that you're able to express and work through, or if it's something you just bury. If the home becomes centered around keeping the cheating partner comfortable, the children feel that, even if no one is saying it out loud. Depending on their age, kids might not understand infidelity, and it might not be appropriate to talk about it directly. But kids of every single age, even before they can talk, understand tension, fear, resentment, walking on eggshells, emotional absence, and just that silent grief of a parent who isn't themselves anymore, and it feels like they're disappeared. You can almost see it in the kid's eyes. It's like, where did you go? In light of all that, can you see that your healing is not selfish? It's exactly what they need. It's part of how you protect just the emotional environment that your children are breathing in every day. And it's forming their largely unconscious assumptions about what their life is supposed to look like. So even if you can't leave, what can you do practically? You can stop making every day about figuring them out. You can create daily anchors that belong to you, that are just for you and about you. Whether that's going on a walk, or journaling, or prayer, or coffee before anyone else in the house is awake, or exercise, or breath work, or music, or a friend that you see on a daily basis or every couple days, sitting outside in the evening, staying up late with a book. Those things are small, but by prioritizing them and intentionally doing it for the sake of putting yourself first, it's not saying putting yourself exclusively. You still have other responsibilities, of course. These are signals to your nervous system that your life still belongs to you, that you still matter, that you're not going away silently. Another important thing is to still have routine for the kids. So regular meals, bedtime rituals, moments of presence, predictable structure as much as possible. Kids do better when at least part of their life still feels stable. And then you also want to be able to disconnect from the constant fighting. So protect your energy from endless circular conversations. Not every thought deserves a confrontation. Not every pain point needs to become another debate. Learn what things you want to document privately. Not because you want to obsess, but because when someone is evasive, dismissive, or manipulative, if you don't combat that in some way, and you don't want to turn everything into a fight, but if you don't combat it in any way, you might just start slowly picking up their belief system instead of your own. So writing things down or logging it in whatever way works for you, maybe just saying it out loud later in the day, can help you stay connected to what's real. Get support and build plans and goals that are just for you. And so I mean even beyond marriage advice, even beyond parenting advice. Not just people telling you what to do in regards to that, but support that helps you become stronger, more grounded, less emotionally dependent on the other person's choices. And then you might need to work on practical independence. That might mean understanding finances and budgeting. You might want to subscribe to one of the many different shows out there that talk about finances. Looking into legal options would be important at some point. Rebuilding friendships, improving work stability, making contingency plans. You don't need to have all of those figured out perfectly immediately, but making progress on those, if nothing else, does reaffirm to yourself that you have some control and that you have some independence. Options create more space internally, more of that internal freedom. And I know this advice sometimes makes people mad, but genuinely think about what you would say to your kids if they were grown and were in a similar situation. Would you tell them to keep begging for crumbs? Would you tell them to ignore the pain so that the household runs more smoothly? I don't know exactly what you would say, but but I think you would agree with the gist of this video, which is saying that I know this is hard. I know you're scared. Do not abandon yourself. So to recap, you don't have to have all the answers today. You don't need to know yet whether you will stay forever or leave eventually, or if you'll try to make a quicker plan to leave. You don't need to force a final decision while you're emotionally bleeding, so to speak. What you want to do if you're caught up in this awful situation is stop centering the person who broke you, center your own healing, center truth, center your children, and center that part of you that you know still matters and still has agency, still has control, even if it's over just your emotions. Because something horrible has already happened. They betrayed you. Don't let something even more awful happen and betray yourself. Even if you can't leave yet, you can stop leaving yourself. And that is where real healing can begin to happen.